Okay, we're live, guys. Happy Thursday and maybe the end of the world. I don't know if you guys saw the headline I put on the thing of it, but the
It's the
Drudge Report
end
went
of
full
the
straight to the
world.
neck. They said "End of the world" is the headline on the news site.
Maybe those Russian bombs were a little more advanced than they thought.
Well, you know what? Let's talk right out. Let's go straight for the relatable story. Patrick, we heard you had an interesting trip to the pharmacy today. How'd that go for you?
Yeah, that was wonderful. So we had to pick up a prescription for one of my kids and stopped into Walmart. I already knew about the AT&T outage because obviously I had to leave home and I was on AT&T. So that's nerve-wracking enough. But I went up to the pharmacy, picked up the prescription. Price is a little higher than normal. I'm like, what's going on? She's like, well, we can't process the GoodRx discount. I was like, what? That's kind of strange. So they mentioned that there was a data breach of some sort. So I looked it up and I saw all the activity on our Facebook group about it, and the conspiracy theory started floating around in my head.
Well, I mean, this isn't conspiracy. This is the one thing I think it's concrete. Change Healthcare, which is one of the biggest pharmaceutical healthcare companies in the nation, is actively experiencing a cyber attack right now. Like that has been confirmed. So they're we don't know what kind. It could be everything from ransomware to DDoS. We're not really sure, but like chances are, you know how in the healthcare industry and pharmaceuticals, everything's connected. So one chain link breaks, the whole chain falls apart.
Yeah.
Hey, I heard there's a the term for that. Have you heard something called supply chains? It's not like we haven't heard that 10 billion times in the last year or two.
Well,
Oh,
it's kind of ironic because they refer to it as Relay Health, and you don't. There's so many mergers and acquisitions that are occurring. You've got what is it, Optum
hmm.
Health, I think, is kind of the big company that's involved in this, and then they were referring to Relay, which Relay is what actually processes the communication from their pharmacy to the discount store, and then being the clever one I am, I'm like, hey, well, what about state insurance? Some of our kids are on state insurance. I said, process it there instead. Brilliant idea. Well, turns out the state insurance portal is down for the same reason.
So let's summarize for our audience. Now we've been on live for a few minutes. What's going on? So uh, right now we are disrupted here in the United States, and we are joined here by the wonderful Brian from B Network, our Canadian friends. So Brian, first off, as far as you can tell, this isn't impacting the Canadian regions from your knowledge, right? Now, obviously, we're not going to ask you to confirm that, but
Yeah, across our client base, we haven't had any feedback that's indicated that we're under any kind of internet or cellular service provider level outages. So we're just looking through the glass across the border at you guys, and like we're all familiar with these types of things when we start seeing disruptions and the word outage, how often it turns out a couple of days later to be reported as
a
some kind of
cyber
a cyber incident, attack,
I mean,
ransomware.
and honestly, I see both sides of that. So let's summarize what's going on for our audience. Right now, there's a massive disruption of a ton of different services across the nation. Everything from healthcare to AT&T to Verizon to a bunch of miscellaneous things. If you visit the website Down Detector, isn't it downdetector.com or downdetector.org, one of the two, you just see red everywhere, right? Like so much is down. And to Brian's point, yeah, like this seems a little convenient at the moment. Like the two running theories I've seen keep coming up is we're having a cyber attack or we're some kind of weird thing. Like I have heard solar flare, right? Like, and to be fair, look up the what was it, the Barrington event? Is that what's called, the Carrington event? What was the one where all the phone lines caught on fire in the 1800s? You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the when we had a small attack back then, but it was natural then.
Yeah, solar
Yeah,
flare.
it wiped out power lines and telex back in the day that they were shut down
Power lines
from a solar flare
to catch fire. There's actually a thing for it. There's a term. What was it called? Shoot, the Carrington. Yeah, it was a Carrington event. That was what it's called. It's called the Carrington event. This is like the 1890s, right? Like so, it was like telegraph lines, but it was a solar flare. It basically disrupted electromagnetic fluctuations on the thing and caused the whole grid basically to burn down. We had to rebuild everything from scratch. So that was the other thing too. Solar flares can do that, but I mean, we've been hearing through the grapevine. I don't know if you guys are paying attention or not. I do look like every year it feels like we are more at threat for a massive cyber attack, right? And what does that translate to the average person? It translates to the key goods and services that we rely on for our daily life just going offline, telecommunications, electricity, etc. So, I mean, that definitely is, I don't know if it's a cyber attack causing it, but we're definitely experiencing it right now. I've had 2 guys alone at my business say, hey, I can't work from home today. I'm on AT&T, I'm on Verizon, and my stuff is just not working. Like that I'm being disrupted.
The gloves are off with the criminals now, right? Even here in Chicago, Lurie Children's Hospital is still trying to dig out from their cyber attack. And that cyber attack, they locked up and compromised the IV machines that are giving life-saving medicine to kids, let alone the records that they stole.
Newsweek just reported 911, a decent chunk of users, over 30,000 reports of 911 outages too. Like 911's being impacted as well. And obviously not across the board 100%, but 30,000 reports a single day. That's a lot of freaking reports of outages.
This Change Healthcare. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Baron.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Don.
This Change Healthcare thing, I've been getting alerts on it all day because of my ties with clients in the medical field. They are 33% of any patient pharmacy records in the U.S. They touch 33% across the board. So that would make you assume there's only like 3 major players in that space. But that's 15 billion healthcare transactions every year that they touch. And that has been compromised. It's not just a ransomware. They're already admitting that data has been exfiltrated. They just haven't said how much and who. But it's going to be everything, you know it.
Let's talk about supply chain seriously from a cybersecurity perspective for a second. Like it's one of the gnarliest things in our industry by far. Like when I think of what's the biggest threat vector to my clients in cybersecurity, you could be glib and say it's people, and that's fair. There's an argument to be made, but I would actually say supply chain's at the top of my risk, right? Through no fault of my own, a key vendor or service that I'm using gets hacked. And because of the ramifications of their hack, I get impacted too, right? Like that's scary to me because I don't know how you protect against that other than like audit your supply chain as best you can, right? Like I do our best, but there are probably vendors even for my own company I'm just not 100% aware of matter downstream because I can only go up one vendor, right? What about their vendors and their vendors and their vendors, right? Like it's one of those things that it's like a Russian egg doll, you know, those Russian nesting dolls, like. How deep does this go? And the answer is pretty darn deep.
Well, my personal perspective on this is that this is a test to see what kind of damage they can do to us. And this is just a test.
All right.
They just want to see what kind of results they can get.
We're putting the conspiracy hat on. Got it. Okay, everyone put your conspiracy hat on.
It's not a conspiracy. This is true thing. We're in war. I mean, honestly, if we're not in cyber war, we're in a limited world war with things going on in Russia and Ukraine. So this is people testing our defenses and seeing where we are and what they can get away with and what effects it has in my regards.
No, I mean, I do agree with you. Like we are actively as an entire planet in active cyber warfare every day. Like that is absolutely, I mean, as early as what, the 80s, I think the US military acknowledged that cyber warfare was going to be a major thing. Like it is because the reach and what's the saying in the investment world? Software is going to continue to eat the world, right? Like more and more the world runs on bits and bytes. So it makes sense that we're all connected. Everything relies on each other. As we saw during the pandemic, all it takes is one specific business, one specific locale going out of whack, and the whole thing goes off kilt. So it's such a huge problem. And I try to focus on the micro level, like what can we do as individuals and businesses to kind of mitigate this risk? But it is the world we live in, right? Like you were saying, the digital impacts the physical. And there's that line that used to exist is just no longer there. If it is, it's stupid blurry. I can't see it.
And let's talk about that for a second. It's not always really the data that they're after. It is the supply chain and the disruption in it. That's what the pandemic was. That's what the attacks in the was it the Mediterranean or the Red Sea, stopping shipping lanes. You have the first reaction when you have an attack like that or an incident would be to disconnect those systems from the internet, and that's going to cause a disruption. So that's what's happening here. That's what happened in what Todd was referencing. There was an offsite radiologist in Minnesota last week. They've been offline a week. They handle over 100 clinics doing radiology analysis. That's going to have a major backlog and all the patients impacted because everybody's got their schedules so tight. We're a just-in-time society. There's just not room for buffers for disruption. I think when those attackers are hitting those various points, they're seeing how big of an impact they can have and what's the best target.
I mean, this week's been kind of one for the news on the cybersecurity side of things too. I mean, we've gone from, it just feels like it keeps getting worse. Like yesterday, I know we were talking about, for our audience that doesn't know, one of our major vendors for us talk about supply chain, right? Like Screen Connect is a huge vendor for cybersecurity and IT professionals. Like they're everywhere. And they had a they got to the point where I didn't realize this was happening until I saw it happening in real time. They started shutting off clients' environments. Did you guys see that? They shut off client environments that did not patch within 24 hours because the hackers were actively going into a major vendor, using that hook to access all of us, right? If anyone who used it, it's clients, and then deploying Lockbit ransomware. Like there was a massive campaign going underway. So Screen Connect just said, allegedly, of course, we're still waiting on kind of the PR releases, allegedly, screw it. If you haven't patched within 24 hours, we're just going to turn it off because we can't risk this. Like unplug it, right? The digital equivalent of unplug it is the answer here. That's great. It probably did save a lot of people, but it also, like, I saw so many posts yesterday, like, hey, why isn't this critical piece of software that I need to run my business working today? Like, people were down, and there was no way around it.
All of that's going to push legislation towards making you patch faster.
And that's where conditional access comes into play. In a lot of these cases, you want to make sure that people are getting into the tools they need to get into only from a specific location. And without that, you've got the door wide open.
I mean, also too, we don't talk about these often. How often you guys talk about disaster recovery plans? Not just like, hey, if your computers melt or whatever, like honest to goodness, like I think one of the things for business continuity we need to start talking about is we need to have multiple key vendors that we can go through as businesses, right? Like you can't put all your eggs in one digital basket, not anymore. If that digital basket's taken offline for an extended period of time, like we're talking about with Screen Connect, what are you supposed to do? You got to run. The only thing you can do to mitigate that is, okay, I've got this key need for my business. Here's how I normally do it. Here's plan B if I can't do how I normally do it, right? Like that's business continuity 101. I think that every business needs to do that now. You can't just assume the vendor's going to take care of it.
Are you guys doing that? Do you have a backup connectivity suite to your? So what I've done, so I have my regular RMM, which has its own built-in remote connectivity, and then I have a second one where that agent is deployed, but my technicians don't even have access to it. So that's an installation there.
I'll let you answer.
We've got a back door to the back door and a backup of the backup.
Yeah, exactly. I think you almost have to do that, but I think a lot of companies maybe that have internal IT aren't thinking that many steps ahead. They're not thinking like a chess game here. They're thinking checkers, right? They're looking right in front of them, and that's it.
That's what's great in our group is it really does teach us to have layers of protection for our clients. Like Logan was just saying, you can't have all your eggs in one basket. You don't want one product covering all your stuff. So you want to have a safety net everywhere down.
If AT&T is your phones and internet today, you're having a bad day.
Right.
Well, I was concerned because I wasn't here at the house and I was across the river, and I'm like checking my cameras, see if I can get online, so I knew if my AT&T was up or my other connection to the internet was up. So I have two here to give me some redundancy, and it's the only thing you can do nowadays to have business continuity is to have a backup of your backup.
And not just your data, but like even email, right? Like one of the things our business continuity allows for, like we're a Microsoft shop. I think most of us here are Microsoft shops, not all. But what happens if Microsoft gets taken offline? It's not so far-fetched anymore, right? If I'd said that 4 years ago, oh gosh, it'll never go offline. Now I'm like, look, if a foreign nation state wants to take a private company offline, it's going to go offline. Like that's the world we live in. So our business continuity says, okay, plan A, we switch to Google temporarily, right? Like we have to. Or plan B, we could go get like as bad as to say, like an Exchange server. We can set up a Exchange server and temporarily run off that. Like we've got layers here because I don't think it's unreasonable anymore to think if someone like a nation state knocks Microsoft offline to make a point, Microsoft's probably not coming back up for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking days, maybe even
And-
weeks.
And Microsoft and Google both say we're not responsible for backups of your data. You need to make backups of your data on our cloud that are not tied to us, because
Yeah.
they can't control anything either. So you've got to have backups of the backups. And it's
Yeah.
it used to be Microsoft 365. You've got everything. You're safe. You're secure. Everything's backed up. Nope. You got to have another backup of that just to make sure.
Yeah.
If you want
And
business continuity to be able to keep rolling, you've got to have redundancy all the way around.
I mean, time is money. Go ahead. Were someone saying something? Sorry.
And not only just the backup of the data, but the ability to get access to it if the place it was originally housed at isn't there anymore. So like Logan was saying, if Microsoft 365 is down for a week more, you may have your data backups, but how are you going to actually get to that content? The way Microsoft stores those data, those data files in like SharePoint Online is not the same way that that you would store it on a server locally. So being able to see it, be able to use it if you need access to it faster than what you can get back to the way business was, you got to think about those steps too.
I knew a guy who had a business of like 50 people, and he literally had how much money he was losing per hour calculated. Like for an hour of downtime, he said he lost, it was like $3,603 an hour. Like he figured that out, right? Like time really is money for businesses. So the thing I think that for both nation states and the common garden variety, I just want to make a quick buck criminals, is they're more and more turning towards downtime as an extortion tactic. If I can make your business hurt or your nation hurt more than it costs to make me go away, I now have leverage to get what I want, right? Like the formula at both the giant level and the micro level is basically the same, right? Like the base formula to get there. Give me what I want to go away, because if you don't give me what I want, I'll make what the price I put on you, right? Like the pain worth so much more than that, right? Like it's going to hurt more to keep me around than go away. That's what I'm seeing across the board. And that seems to be the generous modum operandum for the majority of cyber criminals when they're looking for that leverage. It's just blackmail. Like this is the modern version of blackmail.
We talk about the financial and the money side of it a lot internally, but it came up at a recent conference keynote that cybercrime is now a bigger criminal trade worldwide than the drug trade is. Like people don't understand the financial motivation that a lot of these cyber criminals have as well, with this being a big cash cow, whether it's through extortion of a business over access to their data, or ransomware, or just stealing records for the purpose of selling them on the dark web to other cyber criminals that want to use that information to exploit individuals and companies. Like this is a big dollar business. There are probably large scale criminal enterprises that use this as their primary funding model.
Oh, they're absolutely.
People don't understand why a lot of this stuff happens, and this is a big part of the why.
Did you guys ever read the stuff that came out when the Ukrainian-Russian conflict? There was a big gang called Conti, and they had both Ukrainian and Russian members. Well, obviously that conflict schismed them. So the Ukrainian teams basically published everything they had on the. Did you ever read any of that stuff? How Conti operated? It was absolutely bonkers. This was 2 years ago, right? They were like collecting like 2.7 billion a year in revenues. Like they were like a mature company. They had like 300 contractors. They even had a flipping like a version of an employee of a month award. Like that was the one that caught my attention. I'm like, it literally was, you're the best hacker here this month. Congratulations, right? Like they're running like full-blown cottage industries now. And that's the part that I think a lot of people misunderstand. While today may very well be an attack, chances are it's probably going to be nation state organized if it is. I put money odds on that. And that's not what we're talking about when we bring up like cybercrime and all this other stuff, like cyber attacks. Like majority of it in 2021, I had a stat that was like 70% of all cyber attacks in 2021 were financially motivated versus like 5% that were espionage related. Like the metrics and the ratio of attacks are more and more. The majority of cyber attacks you're going to see in the wild against a business, an organization, individual, it's just going to be your garden variety opportunists looking to make a quick buck.
Yep. And new developments in extortion and everything are really starting to make headway as well.
What does we have someone we know, and she said this is like, what's the impetus here, right? Like, why cybercrime keep doubling year after year, and it really comes down to what's the most powerful drug known to mankind. Their take was easy money. Easy money has always been the most powerful drug known to mankind. Once you give someone a taste, they like gain them to let go of that as like life or death. And that's really what I think is one of the primary things behind cybercrime and cyber attacks is it's a vehicle to make easy money. If you do it right, it's an easy payday. And as we talked about, as long as you keep a relatively low profile, the risk is pretty manageable. The only time you really get busted as a cyber criminal is if you're going for like the big gigantic companies. Like Lockbit just got arrested, right? You probably saw that. Lockbit finally got taken down. Took forever. Like Lockbit's been around for years now. Took forever. I think they were the big guys, right? They're the most well-known ransomware gang at the time. So the U.S. finally said we're going to put some resources into catching them. Most cyber criminals I think I've dealt with, I don't think they're Lockbit. I think they're more like, I'm just going to go after the small businesses, the medium-sized businesses, the ones that don't have, lobbyists or anyone with clout in the government, so I can get away with it. No one's going to look at me twice. I mean, who's here? He's not here today. Isaac was on the call earlier, but he dropped. He's in New York. I know in New York, if the damages don't equal at least $1 million, the local FBI office says sorry, not sorry, right? Like
they changed that this year. It's 10 million now if you're in a metro area.
Wow.
It's $1 million if you're rural. Yeah, it's 10 million, like Chicago area, New York City. If you're in a major metropolitan area, it's 10 million minimum. And with that, they don't have enough agents to cover the cases that are coming in.
I know Secret Service, someone we know, had an incident a while ago, and I won't say who on the stream, where basically Secret Service showed up at one of his clients' doors and said, hey, we need a hard drive off this computer name because we think it's related to Hamas. Right? Like that was he checked. Apparently the person we know called the local police station because the Secret Service had a police escort and everything. And it was legit. Like, okay. Like that's I think it's happening so much it's almost easy to be just numb to it. And now we have this. Kind of hard to be numb to this. I haven't gotten a text message in a really long time on my phone, and I'm on Verizon, so I'm thinking there might be an issue. That's not normal for me.
I posted on Facebook today, be on the watch because I was seeing the chatter of people saying, what's wrong with my phone? It's not working today. And I'm like, yeah, it's a big outage. They're calling it an outage. I would not be surprised if it comes back as a cyber attack at some point. And there are people literally arguing with me, oh, it's just an outage.
It could.
It's
I mean,
it could be.
It could be. I don't think we can make the determination yet. It's just, it seems like a lot of coincidences stacking up all at once. Really quick.
Well, if it was just an outage, I mean, I don't think it would affect Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T, which apparently did at 4:30 in the morning. So to me, it looked more like an attack than an outage. An outage would be one piece of equipment at a central hub, and it would take out their one company, I would think. But if it's hitting all three.
Know.
And usually it's back up a lot quicker. This has been hours and hours where it feels like an investigation more than we got to go fix the cable somebody kicked out of the wall.
So I'll play because you remember like 5 years ago when a Facebook employee in Seattle edited like a routing table in like Chicago remotely, locked themselves out of the routing table, and they broke half the internet just because they messed with the wrong table. Like, do you guys remember that? Like, the whole internet went down for like a day, and it literally was the time it took for that because only that team knew how to get into it, and they couldn't access it remotely. They literally locked themselves out, so they had to all hop on a plane, fly to the data center, go into the terminal, get in, and fix the wrong table they put in. That was like, it broke half the internet for like a day. So to be fair, sometimes bad stuff happens in stupidest ways.
But I will say, no matter what, whether it's an outage or a cyber attack, it has all of us going, this could be an attack, right? Whereas before you would have been like, oh, it's just broke, they'll fix it. Right. Don't worry about it. But it's got all of us going, wait a minute now. We've been lied to before where it's just a, outage. And then all of a sudden, a few days later, then there's like the little blurb at the bottom of the paper. Oh, sorry, we made a mistake. It really wasn't an attack.
Oh, looks like Patrick's posting some official updates here in the chat. So
I found one that was related to Bloomberg there that says that looking into it from the perspective of whether this was caused by a cyber attack. So it's under investigation by U.S. government.
So
Oh,
yeah,
it's a very fair question given everything they've been talking about lately. Yeah. I mean, this is, I'm sure there's a few people out there that this really changed the way their mind was thinking.
so I'm going to share the screen here real quick because
When you're
I
on
want to show the audience. But it looks like things maybe have been restored, and that's totally awesome, at least for AT&T side. Patrick posted right here, and I'm trying to keep an eye on all the news feeds. But it looks like they just updated about 20 minutes ago saying we have restored wireless service to our affected customers. We sincerely apologize. Wow, this is a really brief update.
Very, very bad. Yeah. No inkling as to why. What's the next communication?
We are taking steps to ensure our customers do not experience this again in the future. That is stupid vague.
That went through an attorney or two.
How much
does
can you
not
pay
mean-
without getting
That statement
sued?
cost about $1 million right there. That was $1 million drafted.
It was originally like a whole page of updates, and they gave it to the attorney. The attorney's like, okay, they're like, what can we say without getting sued? And the attorney's like, here's your 2 sentences. Here's my billables, please.
That doesn't mean it wasn't an attack either, though,
Go-
right? I mean, it could have
Right.
been a disruption in some sort of table, and they just restored it, and then locked out whoever was
Well,
getting in. Well,
And depending on the context of disruption, that is also an attack, right? Like DDoS at the end of the day is just making interruption, but it's considered a cyber attack because you can take down services, websites, a whole lot of it, right? There are people who sometimes do that accidentally, right? Like we talked about, and there's also sometimes where it's maliciously directed. It all depends on the intent and where it originated from. So depending on who's talking, right? It can be a cyber attack or an outage. Literally, it's contextual. All
Yeah,
right.
just 2 days ago, the University of Cambridge and the clinical school had a DDoS attack over in the UK. So they reeled from that one for a while as well.
I was I had one yesterday. It was a town near Pittsburgh, actually. And municipalities, if anyone from municipalities is watching, stay on high alert. You guys, the attackers are coming, and they have no indication of slowing down. I'm trying to find the article I referenced. I believe it's over here. Nope, that's where the feds charged the Yakuza with nuclear stuff. That's actually a real story.
Well, while you're looking for that, we had a local municipality, a Chicagoland suburb, get hit pretty hard. And from the playbook of what not to do, the IT director sent out an email to all the employees and said, shh, don't tell anybody it was a cyber attack. Just say it was an outage.
Yeah, well, here it is right here, Washington County. So this is right outside of Pittsburgh, I believe. Paid $350,000 ransom after a cyber attack just less than a week ago. They formally voted on Thursday on handling the recent cyber attack. Did they do a vote? They did. They voted to reimburse the ransom payment as a board. What the heck? We must vote if we're going to pay the hackers. We vote we pay the hackers.
And that's somebody's tax dollars, right? That's somebody's property tax paying for that. And even if it's insurance, it's somebody's tax dollars that's going to have to pay for the increased insurance premium.
They specifically mentioned that they had to pay the Russian cyber company. Look.
Doesn't Homeland Security have a thing about sending money over to state actor terrorist organizations?
All seriousness, that's a real.
That's an admission. That's interesting.
Well, it's also too like nobody's ever knows what to do, right? Like because you don't know where attribution is. This is actually a real world scenario. Say the attackers are coming from Iran, right? Are you violating U.S. sanctions by paying them ransom? How are you supposed to know that? But the way our my understanding is our sanctions laws are written is it's strictly a liability thing. Like there is no intent kind of a deal. You just get owned on liability. So if a company pays a ransom and it happens to be the ransom actors in a sanctioned place like Korea, Iran, Russia's definitely moving in that direction. You're in a really big legal quandary if Homeland Security starts asking you questions. Well, in Bryant's case, it would be the other equivalent. Although, no, Homeland Security would come for Canadians too. They're up there with the Treasury. They don't mind doing international interviews. Sorry, I'm looking at Brian right now, and Brian, I say this out loud because I love making jokes with you. But like, if the grid goes down, you Canadians, you're gonna be fine. You're just gonna ride the moose in town.
Just go fishing, man. Just go fishing.
Well, this time of year, I don't know how much fish you're gonna get. Isn't it pretty frozen up there right now?
Yeah, most of the fishing seasons are closed right now, and anything you could catch would be deep water. So
That's when you drive the truck out onto the lake.
Good idea. Yeah.
Do you do ice fishing in all seriousness where you're at? Do you ever go to ice? Is it like an ice fishing area?
people do it. I don't.
Okay. I was just imagining Brian on the ice like a little crank bro, like, I'm gonna get my dinner.
With Wi-Fi in his igloo.
Yeah, we'll definitely find out over the next few days about what this fallout's going to be. I was mentioned before we started this conversation too that between the news in December and last month about the FBI cracking down on Lockbit and some of the other hacker groups, that you start to think to yourself, oh well, maybe this one group is responsible for 80% of the hacks global, so we'll just have a little bit of a reprieve, and then something like this just all of a sudden changes.
It's like a vacuum. Something will fill in the space real quick.
Oh, very.
So I got two questions for you guys, and serious questions, right? What are organizations supposed to do, and what are individuals supposed to do? Because I think the answer is different between those two categories about managing risk in this area. Like, obviously, you can't prevent it. I think today, if it is a cyber attack, we'll more than demonstrate that, assuming it is. So, what do you do to protect yourself against it?
I'll start on the individual side.
Oh, okay.
Because actually that's an interesting claim. When I was talking about what we run into a lot as business owners that don't understand that cybersecurity is a big topic. It's a very complex topic, and nobody talks about it in the local pubs, breweries, and golf game. So what can we do as individuals to help raise the general awareness and the I care attitude about businesses? And that is when you're searching for services, be it a dental office, wink, wink, dental office, especially any healthcare services, even your auto repair shop. Say, what are your data security practices? How do I know that when I give you my credit card, you're handling it with care? And just ask those providers and take into consideration their response.
Yeah, So we're getting some comments on YouTube actually from, I don't know who Crackshot3222 is, but he's putting some good stuff in here, right? Like, first off, we don't know what happened. That's fair. And I think we've said this multiple times. We don't know what's happening. So we're just speculating at this point. Second, he says, one of the key things everyone needs to ask themselves is, how does winter look like for you in your area when you don't have power? That's one of the big ones. Yeah, I'm in Ohio. Brian, you're in Nova Scotia, so you're even more north than me. Winter, you need heat, right? Like, it's not optional. Today it's not too bad, but we were sub-zero there for a little bit not too long ago. Then the last thing he said was the potential of a Stuxnet virus attack is devastating. Ooh, that comment is.
Yeah.
Are you guys all familiar with the Stuxnet story?
It's been like 20 years since I've really heard a lot about it, but that's always been the scare. And I hear every other day, it feels like I hear some attack on industrial control systems and our water systems in the U.S. Yeah,
so we'll end the podcast, I think, today on this note, because with Stuxnet, we can't just say that and not explain what it is, because we do have people tuning in live right now. So Stuxnet, can't pronounce right today. And this is all allegedly, Stuxnet was a virus that hit some Iranian nuclear facilities that through various means and allegedly may have been sponsored by the United States and the Israeli military. No attributions have been officially disclosed. But it basically, by increasing, so in Iranian nuclear facilities, they have these centrifuges. They're essential for enriching uranium, and they spin really freaking fast. Stuxnet, it hacked the computer and it upped the RPMs of the centrifuges, made them so they span way quicker than they could actually rated to spin. And it literally broke everything in the environment. They broke a bunch of centrifuges. Those centrifuges are not easy to replace. They're actually extremely hard, especially with Iran being sanctioned the way it is. So it set back Iran's nuclear program literally decades just by getting something on the computers and increasing how fast something spun, essentially is what it boiled down to. Like, it was that simple. And so, but the problem is then we look at that and we look at ourselves and we're like, wow, how could something like that impact us, right? How could, if someone got into the water main and through the computer turned up the pressure, what would that do to us, right? Like, or the power to turn up, like, go ahead, Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, that's okay. So, I mean, in the Chicagoland area, all of Chicago gets their water from Lake Michigan. And just about every suburb that's in a Collier County gets their water from Lake Michigan through Chicago. What they can do there is if they get a hold of the algorithm, they can up or decrease the chlorination going into the water supply. So it would either over-chlorinate and make it undrinkable or allow bacteria to get into the water supply that's going not only to Chicago, but all of the collar cities. I mean, for miles, it is millions and millions of people. That would be the simplest way, is just affect the chlorination that's sanitizing the water from Lake Michigan.
Was that the one where the person had TeamViewer installed on the main computer that controlled everything? There was a story that came out like 2 years ago. I remember that vaguely.
There may have been. I'm just saying that would be the way, if I was going to play that devil's advocate and see what the weak link would be, that would be an easy place, because then what you would do is you would just then also affect the meters that are reading the levels and say, everything's okay, don't worry, until people start getting sick.
Absolutely.
Right. If you affect the power grid, people are going to know pretty quick. Right. But you could go over voltage that might start to affect certain devices. I mean, there's transformers on the poles that you really are not internet connected, but you could mess with the smart meters in people's houses. There's a lot of interesting plays that if they're not already in and waiting to do that, if they get in, they've got the code ready to go.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, we've been on for 45 minutes or 37 minutes now, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. But I think key takeaway is we're going to wait and see, but there is stuff that you can do in the immediate future that actually makes a meaningful impact on the risk that you have from this. I think basic backups, what we call business continuity and disaster recovery. If I lose access to something, if something takes me offline, how do I get back up and running? That's the big one I'm going to focus on as quickly as possible. Having someone either internally or externally make you that plan with you, that's going to go a long ways between, okay, this happened and we have a plan to get back up and running that's got a reasonable shot versus now what do we do? Like, those are two different worlds to be in this kind of scenario.
2FA, MFA everywhere. I say it all the time.
It's not a cybersecurity stream unless we mention the word MFA at least once.
MFA everywhere.
All right.
Everywhere.
I'm Logan, CEO of TTS. We'll go ahead and introduce ourselves real quick and we'll end off there.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate the time.
Todd
All right.
Thorson, Tange Technologies. Have a good day. Patrick, Brian, Baron, Logan. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Have a